Okay, let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. At the beginning of 2026, we wanted to look at the risks that are presenting themselves for the rest of this year. It's a timely topic. It does feel like risks are increasing at the moment, and the world is becoming a scarier place. And I'm very happy to introduce Nico, who's a long-time committee member of the European branch and is presenting today in his role as a consultant for Hillmont Associates. And he's going to talk a bit about those risks and what we can do to manage them. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think we're going to have a great hour. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll pick those up at the end and put them to Nico and get some clarity on those. With that, over to you, Nico, and it's all yours.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Panorama 2026 and what to expect this year. John, screen okay?
It's all good. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's lovely. So just one note, my voice is a bit funny, so in case that I need to cough, can you please jump in? I'll let you know when that is about to happen.
Okay.
What we're going to see today is four trends that I can understand that they're going to be happening in 2026. Look, if I have a possibility to look at the future, we'll give you the lottery numbers and we all can, go on pension with pina coladas. But what we're going to do is to look what organizations can do to prevent the different risks that we are having and that we are foreseeing for this year. Now, things are very volatile at the moment. We don't know if the US is going to annex Greenland or not. So far, they have done something with Venezuela. It's unclear how, but they started last week already to sell oil from Venezuela. So geopolitical risks are major. Artificial intelligence is going at the speed of light. There are a lot of things that are happening that they did not know that they could happen so fast. And that is having major effects on organizations. Cybersecurity, major agenda item for any organization, small, big, large, government, etc. And climate and operational risks for the future. Let's start with geopolitics. Now, the area is quite unstable. We don't really know what is going to happen. I took a few of the trends from important players in the geopolitical arena. This is what they say are the trends for 2026. The Council on Foreign Relations is a think tank from the US. It is nonpartisan. It has from both sides. And this is what I see as an important for the US foreign policy in 2026. The first one, there is an accelerated race on the control of minerals and rare earths. And as you know, China is dominant on this market. So it could be quite important that China dominance is challenged in many ways, because if they were to keep the dominance that they have, they may control certain industries altogether. And that, for national security, sovereignty, and so on, may allow the imposition of agenda within different countries. Now, we have heard about the tariff war. We all know that last year the US imposed tariffs in many countries, other countries as well, they impose on the US products. That has a squeeze on the acquisitive power from every purchaser in the world. And that means that, if we have less money available, there may be some decision making about where to put the money. Very important, 4th of February, the Nuclear Arms Non-Proliferation Treaty, called New START, is finishing. And there is nothing apparent that could be a replacement. So that's something that personally worries me too. USA and Russia must negotiate, but we don't really know what. Now, you may have heard about petrostates. A lot of countries, thanks to the petrol wealth, the oil wealth, they're able to develop. Well, now we're seeing something that is called the electrostate. The first one is China. They have been able to completely switch around an unstable production and supply of electricity 15 years ago to something that is now a major power exporter of clean energy. So China is an electrostate. thanks to the changes to the electric mobility, to changes into their grid, they have been able to become an electrical superpower, and they are exporting clean electricity elsewhere. That is helping the development of electricity viable products, which have an impact on climate change in other countries around them. So that's also important. And the US and many other countries have plummeted their foreign aid. And since the US have shrunk more than 50%, that has had an impact on international organizations, many of them from which the US have withdrawn. Last week, the US have withdrawn out of 66 international organizations. The most impacted group are women, because they are not having access to education, access to loans, access to business, etc. So this is what is happening with that. The Red Cross is acting in about 100 conflicts globally. There are about 15 of those which are considered major conflicts. So there is over 1,000 deaths a year. Those active conflicts, you know that war is no business for us, it's business for just a few people, arms dealers, etc., and security contractors probably, but for the rest of us, it's no business. It's very destabilizing, excuse me. It creates a lot of problems on the supply chain. We have to take longer routes. It has effects on the possibility to access certain things, and the indirect possibility that you may be buying something in goodwill, but finishes in the hands of warlords. So that is also something that we have to keep in mind. There are many active conflicts at the moment. The United Nations produced this report and the outlook for 2026. Now, mind you, is an economic-centric report. They say the global growth is steady, not growing. So, and they expect 2026 to be a similar year. That's related to the tariffs and also the uneven development of certain regions in the world. Maybe trade could slow down in 2026 due to tariffs, since people have to allocate their money to more urgent things, and consumerism takes a hit, which a lot of economies are based on consumerisms. Inflation is easing, but the cost of living squeeze persists. That is related to tariffs, but also the amount of debt, especially in low-income countries. They remain high debt. What happens with that? Low-income countries have to produce bonds for someone to purchase them. They have to pay a high interest, which that translates in higher taxes for the people living in those countries. So yes, that could have a squeeze on the acquisitive power as well. Let's go now to the EU. In the EU, we continue working from the priorities of the Commission until 2029. That, of course, it is a framework from which they work. Importantly, security and defense. The war in Ukraine has exposed a weakness in the EU. We cannot get agreed how to defend our borders. The food and water security is a major issue in the south of Europe, where the certification is advancing, and that could have an impact on the prices of food and the accessibility of water at certain points of the year for the countries in the south. And reinforcing democracy, since we have a huge rise of right-wing parties and very extreme worldviews within our democracies. So how do we reinforce democracy and moderate views that allow progress to continue without going into a nihilist destruction of everything kind of approach? Look at the European Parliament. Now, if you compare with the last period, these numbers, let's say the progressive side of thing was much higher. They even included up to half. Even the European Popular Party, which is center-right, was quite bigger. We have seen a major growth of, let's say, nationalistic parties, very nation-state, sovereign type of parties going into the parliament. And if you want to say, my opinion is that they are working against the European Union from within, taking the salaries and taking their ideology into the parliament, not allowing progress, not allowing the budget to go through. And certain things where coordination should happen is not happening because they are blocking it. So that is quite an important block as well. While they don't have the majority, this is making certain players to work together. So we have to be careful with what is happening there. The Sustainable Development Goals, they're only, T-4. They expire in 2030. So the United Nations must start working towards the next set of goals, the next set of priorities for the world to go ahead. Now, if we have a war, if we actually have more conflict that includes bigger players, this could actually become an issue and be relegated. At the end of the day, the major global areas of risk are poverty. We're still not eradicating poverty at the rate that we should. Hunger is stalled. The progress on hunger as SDG is stalled. About 8% of the population faced hunger. Climate change continues to be an issue. Now records say that 2025 may be the hottest year on record. That always have a major impact on the low-income countries and countries that struggle with food security, with water security, etc. And the debt crisis, in which many countries have to resort to several different lenders that they are squeezing the natural resources, their population, to pay back that debt. All right. From the goals, only 18% are on track, 48% is moderate progress, and 34% are stagnant. At the end of each one of these sections, now we're in geopolitics, I want to speak about what your organization can do. So organizations, many of the ones that we speak here in the IIRSM, already have ISO 14001. And ISO 14001 does cover a lot of risks and opportunities related to compliance, external factors affecting an organization like climate change and extreme weather, operational risks, and strategic risks. And that can be paired up with ISO 31000 and ISO 22301. If you're a smaller company, you, for example, could do an issues-led versus an impact-led framework. Issues-led is where you identify specific events and monitor things that could trigger a break in your supply chain that could be critical to your business. And then you assess what impacts, for example, if a specific region becomes inaccessible or there is a war or whatever it is, you can do a scenario resilience framework that will help you to try to understand where the risks are for you. What are the impacts in your organization? And KPMG has a geopolitical risk response framework. If you want to do it, it's downloadable from the internet. That's two of the frameworks that we can use. For ISO 31000, I just want to give you a little overview. There is 8 principles, which is it is integrated, it's structured and comprehensive. So you can compare what could happen with different scenarios. It's customized to your unique constellation as an organization. You have to engage stakeholders to consider diverse perspective. There is also what is a dynamic approach in which you can anticipate and create responses to different challenges. And you work from the best available information. It's not only that you rely on data, but also on feedback. Things like the variation of price on a product, the possibility to have droughts in a different area could give you a lot of information about where those uncertainties exist for your organization. And of course, continual improvement. ISO 22301, it is a business continuity standard. You have to do a business impact analysis where you identify critical activities and then you determine a maximum time for which the business can survive without them. I made an example for an energy company in the next slide, you could see very clearly. Then you create a risk assessment, which are the threats to your operations and not your organization, your operations. So it's a more life cycle kind of approach. You do a business continuity strategy, and then what could be done if that were to happen. And then, of course, it requires you to do exercise, drills, and tests. It's a bit of a military approach to it. Here you have an example of what could happen to an energy company. So a critical activity that could be interrupted for no more than 15 minutes could be grid operations and load balancing, because if that creates a total blackout, it could create damage to physical infrastructure and so on. Just to give you an example, these slides will be available for later. Let's move into artificial intelligence. That is a very interesting area that in 2026 we should take action on. So in 2025, what happened is that a lot of the artificial intelligence deliverables for 2030 were actually achieved then. So they realized that certain thinking within these with these agents has become much easier to achieve, and the velocity of development it is faster than we expected. That is used for good things and for bad things. The regulation, the EU is the only region in the world that has an artificial intelligence act that is responding to the market as expected. Other regions have absolutely no legislation to defend you. And then organizational readiness is too slow. Many organizations are still using artificial intelligence as a Google type of system, and to complete information and to complete reports and to beautify slides. Mind you, this is a slide that you're reading right now. I wrote it like a normal thing, but it actually made it with artificial intelligence, beautifying it. And if you realize, it has changed several things into American English. Let's speak about deep fakes. What is a deep fake? That is a type of synthetic media where, using an image or videos available in the internet, they are altered using powerful AI, and they replace a person's likeness with another in a very realistic manner. Now, that can be used to make political leaders and economic leaders or actors to make parodial stuff, but also it can be used for malicious uses. There are certain channels in the internet where you wouldn't know the newscaster is a hologram, let's call it a hologram, and is spreading misinformation. Then also is used to take images of, someone in sunbathing and creating non-consensual explicit content, and also is facilitating financial fraud through identity theft. An example for it is applications for bank accounts that can now be done online. Sometimes you have a video call to ensure that you are you, and they are achieving to pass that filter, an interview with a human. So it's actually quite impressive what artificial intelligence can do. Now, malicious use of artificial intelligence, which could also be very beneficial for us as organizations and people. They are analyzing large data sets. They identify vulnerable targets. They are actually able to clone voices by collecting information from your Instagram account or any videos that you may have published in LinkedIn or YouTube. And that is called phishing. They are also creating identities, so possibilities of people to open new bank accounts, apply for loans, and commit financial fraud. The US last year was hit by major fraud attacks like these, in which several millions were stolen. We still don't have the figures. And then, of course, insurance companies and banks are using AI systems to try to select if the person that applying for a loan or applying for a bank account is real, is the right type of group that they're targeting, and so on. What they have seen is that 90% of certain communities and minorities were discriminated just because their race, their gender, whatever it is. So it's creating a lot of issues for those companies in the form of bias. Intellectual property theft. So let's say that I, as an employee, go to ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or one of them, whichever it is, and I want to consult, is the patent for so-and-so already registered? Is the name for whatever already registered? Whatever it is that you're checking on a public network, on the public system. And remember, a lot of the information that you publish in the internet, they become later owned by the system that you're collecting that information from. So let's say in Instagram, your pictures are not yours, they're theirs. They are from the Meta group now. Once you put them in there, they have the right to do anything with it. In many countries of the world. In the European Union, they are more limited, but still, they can still use a lot of your image for certain things. So by consulting things, I may be infringing intellectual property without realizing. And whoever is checking that may use that as an opportunity for them to grow their business. Market manipulation. We have seen this type of attacks in which robots buy or sell certain stocks and bonds in the market very quickly, creating instability, usually it's for profit, of course, but they're targeting the price of a stock for positive or negative. So that is also an issue. Now, the aftermath of these malicious uses of AI is complex legal challenges regarding who did it, why they did it, who is in charge of this issue. If you put an artificial intelligence system there for people to use, for example, to consult what is the price of the best-selling market stocks today, but that is used to manipulate price, well, who has done the wrong, right? So there are quite a few issues that there are legal complications for later. It is used, for example, to spread misinformation. There are major uses of that. We saw what happens with misinformation during the COVID-19 pandemic. It can create massive social responses, telling the government is lying to us, they're putting implants in the vaccines. You heard it all. In Brazil, for example, 30% of people believe that climate change is not caused mainly by human activity, and 24% of the population believe that the temperature record is unreliable or rigged. In the United Kingdom, 29% believe that a significant number of scientists disagree on the cause of climate change. The reality of that number is 1%. Under 1% of scientists disagree with the common understanding of climate change and the science behind it. And Eurobarometer research from 2024 indicate that less than 1 in 10 Europeans deny climate change. However, the level of misinformation out there keeps growing year on year. No one knows how much there is out there because it's impossible to monitor all the networks, all the social networks that exist. But yes, there is channels in Telegram that are dedicated to spread misinformation, and the same for Facebook and all the social media channels. The European Union Artificial Intelligence Act entered into force in 2024. However, between 2024 and 2027, major pieces of the legislation are coming in staggered. This year in 2026, we will have mostly 80% of the act active, with a little part for 2027 for SMEs. But for large companies, this is really important. The Act covers any company that serves European customers. That means that if your company is registered in Europe or abroad, but you serve European customers, you must comply with the Act, and you have to demonstrate how you comply with the Act. So it's a risk-based approach, and it requests you to disclose information, what is the potential risks to humans, and then tougher are the rules. So unacceptable risks of the use of AI. Social scoring by governments. So for example, to win elections, that has happened. Unwittingly for Facebook, they use information that Facebook was collecting for advertising purpose to create voter profiles that help to win elections in about 100 countries. If you remember the scandal of Cambridge Analytica, and yes, you can you can look at the social network documentary Netflix, where you will see all about it. How they actually use the information in Facebook for advertising to create voter profiles and win elections all over the world with targeted information. Some of it was not real. You cannot use it for untargeted facial recognition, so it can only be used for security issues, and it can be kept for a certain amount of time. For example, in airports, the maximum time is 7 days. After that, it has to be deleted. And the Act requests that for uses of European citizens when they go abroad. Well, they cannot make it comply, but it's a requirement. And there's, of course, exploiting vulnerable groups, like, for example, children. In places where there is high risk, so employment agencies, education, where they keep a lot of information from you, well, that should be protected. They should have systems that they are not online. Excuse me 1 second. I need to cough. Where is the microphone? Give me 1 second. I cannot make the microphone to appear. Excuse me. So the risk management system has to be in place. The training on data awareness for everyone in a company have to be done. There should be some oversight of the systems. So every so often, a team of experts should check at the data and that there are no vulnerabilities, that they have not been attacked, etc., etc. And then some things that we have minimal risk, for example, is spam filters. We want artificial intelligence to be at full power for detecting spam, phishing emails, or whatever it is that could cheat someone into using or to giving their personal data into fraudsters. Penalties for non-compliances, it could go to 7% of the global turnover of a company. So imagine that was an Amazon, an Apple, a Coca-Cola. That could be gazillions. But these two can be added one on top of each other. So why the EU is regulating AI? Well, of course, because the use of fraud is major. Because the agency that some of these systems are having is amazing. So sometimes you speak with chatbots and they are extremely capable of resolving simple problems. And that is progressing and progressing faster and faster. There is also a coding leap. That means, while some AI is developing very fast, we don't have enough coders to do the job for counter fraud and the malicious use of AI. And then the proliferation of high fidelity deepfakes with audio and video, in which you can have certain conversations with people thinking that they are, is going up and up. And we are seeing crime happening like that much more. Now, what is developing as expected or slower? Funnily enough, AI should be algorithmical exponential multiplier for productivity. Certain things should be done so much faster. However, what is happening is that we have productivity losses because a lot of the companies are wasting time trying to understand if what it has been sent to them, it has given to them, is actually real or is a fake. In some cases, the attacks, requests for information, the requests for quotation, if it's them, is a real company behind it, or it's actually a system trying to gain information and trying to go into the system. And what we call artificial general intelligence, which is a more realistic human thinking logic system, could actually become quite general by 2030s. So that is something that we have to start preparing as organizations. Now, infrastructure bottlenecks. That requires the cooling units, the systems that go behind artificial intelligence. Well, at the moment, we cannot match the demand with the supply. So that is, well, it's an opportunity for some people to invest, It requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of production and a very specialized production. And due to the security, for example, think about energy producing centers or even a nuclear plant or military facilities, you really need to have a lot of security checks and specific information of who is your producer, who is your supplier, before you can actually send them to supply with proprietary information that you have. I hope that makes sense. Look at this case study. So it was a CFO that was having a meeting with several colleagues. It's about 20. They were in the call. Every person on the call, except the victim, was actually an AI generated deepfake. So he was talking to 20 different real people, but they were not real. They took from him 25 million USD. So video and voice are no longer reliable proofs of identity. Organizations must implement out of the internet or out of the network verification systems. So this resulted in a $25 million loss for Arup, the infrastructure company. Look at case study number 2. So they have an AI-powered hiring platform. And suddenly they discovered there was a massive vulnerability where 64 million applicants' records were exposed. We don't know what happened with that information. We don't know if the fraudsters use it. What they know is that it was exposed. The cause was because they have a test account to internally teach their system, and the password was 123456. The account was never deactivated. Some kind of system found it, artificial intelligence as well, and then they exposed those 64 million worldwide applicants' records. So you have to be very careful, and you cannot have a smart tool with dumb security, because then you have a liability. Now, let's go positive. What are great uses of artificial intelligence? In the last couple of years, we have seen a major advancement on medicine research and health applications. Rare diseases, they have completed genome, they are reading certain information and being able to fill the gaps where scientists were not able to find it, or if they were, they're doing it much faster than scientists could. They're also very good at managing large data sets, and you can find trends. Imagine global companies with 1 million employees, how they manage data and find trends and where they find the gaps. So AI is very good at that. They do it very fast. Flood and wildfire warning systems connected to satellites are able to predict what is going to happen within 7 days. So that actually makes much easier evacuations and to know where the peril will do. Bioacoustic rainforest protection. They're using that. They're putting sensors where they hear, and artificial intelligence recognizes chainsaws, frogs, the voice of people, keywords that they say, to know that they're going to try and do something in the forest, for example, cutting illegally or logging illegally. So then the rangers can go and react. You can have inclusivity tools for people in which they read or they do sign language of a website for them, and then they have access to that information that before they didn't have. Smart irrigation systems in which we know the level of humidity, the level of water, the quality of the soil, etc. It helps the agriculture and the production of food. For mental health, some chatbots are able to be the first instance to react with someone and derivate them to the right professional to be able to be supported. It's making waste sorting much easier because it can find valuable products within the waste, and that is making more waste become a resource. From pictures, this is amazing. Artificial intelligence is actually from pictures that tourists are posting in Instagram, Facebook, and so on. They're actually able to count numbers of the species by the skin of the animals. They're able to know if they have any illness, any viruses, skin conditions, and so on, and they can react with that information. And paradoxically, the best way to combat deepfakes is with AI, with an AI that is more advanced, more intelligent, and that they are very good at finding misinformation or disinformation. And through the uses of AI, we are having more energy grid efficiency. What your organization can do for artificial intelligence? Well, invest on it, first of all. You have to have an ethics controls in place. Like an ethics policy is beautiful, but it's not enough. You can establish keywords offline where people know that every week there is a keyword where they start a meeting, and then each one of them will have a keyword, so then they know that they are not deepfakes. Start using passkeys, for example, biometric information to access a meeting, then that makes it impossible for a deepfake to be able to do that, at least for now. Then also control the public data about your people, your teams that is available in networks, in socials, and that could create, they could allow certain malicious uses of AI by allowing them information about your face, etc., etc. When you close the browser, ensure that you delete everything so no robots can steal any information, passwords, etc. that you may have after you close the window. And auto delete on organizational level from 7 to 30 days. Whatever information is compliance-based and you have to keep for compliance purposes, you should do it in a parallel system in a server which is located in a certain area but doesn't need communication through public networks. And when there is payments that need approval, especially when it's well above certain amount, there should be a dual or triple approval of payments, so to ensure that no one can be cheated as badly. Now, it can still happen. The fraudsters become more fine-tuned and faster. So, very related to it, let's go into cybersecurity. What is the cost of cybersecurity? So, well, look at this. Globally, it's expected to be 23, nearly 24 trillion US dollars in the year 2027. And that is because the cost of managing this risk is increasing year on year, it's becoming more specialist, and you need more people. Now, that is an important point for us risk managers. We work in health and safety and environment sustainability, ESG, etc. We may see our budgets touched by this. So we have to be very smart in how we keep this information, and we also react to the threats of cybersecurity and artificial intelligence and as an opportunity for our business to ensure that our budgets are not cut. So keep an eye on that. We spoke about the deepfake frauds. There is also something called prompt injection, where attackers hide malicious instructions or files, in the website of the company AI assistant. So then tricking the AI system of your company to leak sensitive data. So, for example, the chatbot will be interacting with what is a supposed client. They go through the security, so then they start asking for information, and where they see a vulnerability, they will go into your system. Predator bots, what they do is something to call scrape. So they learn information, they find information on your network's defense that they are weak, and then they go through it. And they can adapt their strategy without human input. There is a lot of this. If you have here, the BBC has a fantastic series on this, where North Korean hackers are going into companies looking for bounties, central banks, and so on. I don't remember exactly the name now. It will come to me. I just have the image in my head, but I don't remember exactly the number. And because the AI is not fully developed, what's happening is a lot of data sets are being harvested, kept, but at the time that they are needed, they will be decrypted by these cyber criminals. So it is very important that your company has a way to cut the source of information for these criminals. Look at this incident. It's about Ferrari. A senior executive at Ferrari was called by the CEO, Benedetto Vigna. Benedetto Vigna had the voice. It was exactly like him. He had the Italian accent and the cadence. The person thought that it was him. But then the CEO asked for a large amount of money, which created some doubt on the caller, this executive. So then the executive said, well, can you tell me what was the name of that book that you recommended me last week? Because I cannot remember. I tried to buy it. Automatically, the AI deepfake couldn't answer the question, so it hung up automatically. When they checked, the CEO had never called him. So, I don't know if you're aware, there is a directive from 2022, which we expect it will be extended and new proposals will be put through this year. If that happens, you should know about this directive. It upholds cybersecurity from government and organizations. Excuse me. Each state should adopt a national cybersecurity strategy, which most countries in the EU by now have done. It also covers large companies and strategic sectors. At the moment, that includes 18 critical sectors. You have there the links to check which ones are them, but expect energy, military, where data, information, critical systems of a country are located. It asks you to understand what is the supply chain of your technology, of your information, and what are the vulnerabilities there. And what is the cybersecurity education and awareness of your people, and what levels you should have depending the criticality of your sector to the government. So that is important to know that this exists. If there is a big incident, you have to notify authorities. And it's expected that SMEs are included into this directive, but the level of the incident should be different. In the case of certain SMEs that may have, for example, let's say bioengineering data, because that's what they do as a business, well, that could be notifiable. Whereas if it's just minor incidents, while you notify, it's not very important. But there are national response teams that can support companies to try to stop the data leakages and the problems that cybersecurity criminals create, especially, for example, the ransomware, in which they don't reestablish the information or the systems until you pay them a certain amount. What organizations can do: have an expert team in place. Even if you're an SME, have someone external, internal, whatever it is, you have to have someone. Identify weakness points. And there is auto-delete information systems, keep compliance ones in a separate system, and become more savvy than the fraudsters. That's really the bottom line. Build expertise, build awareness training within your organization, and things that may be like a simple check in artificial intelligence about information, or how to make something better in a slide, or what is accurate information, maybe giving information to fraudsters. So you have to be very careful with that. While it sounds very limiting, try to understand what is the trade-off between productivity and using artificial intelligence and open systems. Let's go to climate and operational risks. This is a table of a company called Nordsip. They are a consultant that specialize in risk management. This is for the European market, so all the markets are not considered here. They say for the late century or mid-century, let's say, public finances are an issue. Property and insurance markets, because it's becoming more uneconomical and cost of living, could have a result in other economic sectors by squeezing what people have to spend. Population changes due to water or food scarcity. That is something that they see could be an increasing risk. Important things for the European Union. In June 2026, the carbon border adjustment mechanism comes into place. That helps is a regulation that allows CO2 emissions to be charged on imported goods. Up till now, European goods were levied that tax. However, that put them in a different footing with imported goods. Well, that is finished in June 2026. There's going to be a cost in certain imported goods related to the CO2 emissions. So, if we get apples from South Africa brought on a ship, will cost much less than if they are brought in a plane, etc. The EU deforestation regulation, well, it has been in place already for a year. There are new deadlines for compliance, and it includes small and micro enterprises that will enter in 2027. The EU deforestation regulation requires that any size company must prove that the products that they're using, cocoa, coffee, palm oil, rubber, timber, are not sourced from deforested land. Now, they have to do that through external certifications, through internal checks, etc., depending what are the thresholds of how much they buy. Now, let's put the example of a small coffee shop that takes, from very specific agricultural addresses, their coffee beans and so on. They have to produce information that they are taking it from non-deforested land. So it will affect a lot of European companies from all sizes. And you know that palm oil, it is well known to come from deforested land, specifically authorized for the governments on those areas. Still, we will have to check that they are not illegal deforestation. There is an expansion on the sustainability reporting and transparency. There will be something that I really like, that is the ESG rating agencies. So agencies providing information on ESG ratings are going to be treated like banks. So the European Securities and Markets Authority will be regulating them, subjecting them to transparency tests and information supervision, so they are not greenwashing and selling bonds or stocks that they are not correctly labeled as green. The right to repair directives come into place for everyone, which means that certain products, electronics specifically, and white goods should be replaceable with cheaper generic parts. There shouldn't be proprietary parts, so the life cycle of a product is longer. And we don't need to constantly take raw resources to start again and get products into the market. For many companies, it's much better business to give you a new product than to repair parts of it, right? So this is what we're trying to address here, that the life cycle of the products is longer and we put less pressure on the planet taking those. So, empowering consumers, I'm conscious of time. I want to go through this. The Circular Economy Act will go into a review this year. We expect digital product passports, and we will have information of what is the impact of that product on the environment and social impacts by 2027. So that could be a game changer on the information that we have as consumers for our green transition, the personal one. The Ocean Act have some non-tangible objectives included in this year for degraded coastal maritime habitats, and of course, what is the sustainable maritime economy. So those ones will come with social value and things that may not be measured in money, but we expect that will come in 2026, last part of the year. So here you have more or less, once again, I created this with AI. You have a few ideas of what we see are the environmental and climate risks. Extreme weather events. The US last year suffered 33 climate extreme weather events. That is, if you think more or less one every 10 days. That has a cost for banking, that has a cost for the consumer, that has a cost for insurance, and that is translated on the premium cost. So that is something to have in mind. Water scarcity is creating disruption in the food chain. Biodiversity loss. We really don't know in the longer term what are the impacts, because we don't know what we're losing for access to medicinal uses and so on, but it has a disruption on ecosystems. Pollution has a cost because we have to restore ecosystems, and climate migration due to the impossibility to continue living on those countries. Most of them are on the equator. Most of them are already low-income countries where social stability is very limited. So I want to give you an overview. There is the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulations, which are key rules requiring financial firms to be transparent on how they integrate sustainability into investment decisions. That is to prevent greenwashing, and requires them to do standard disclosures. And there is also a revision of the EU taxonomy. The EU taxonomy is a classification system that defines environmental sustainable economic activities that is to support investment into green initiatives and companies, organizations, initiative, research and development that supports the EU Green Deal goals and promote a low carbon economy. What the organization can do: get an ISO 14001, map your exposure to key raw materials that your processes and products use, and create a China plus one strategy just in case something goes awry with China. The EU and China are having a lot of friction at the moment. That could be an issue if they decide to limit the access to rare materials. Integrate the carbon border adjustment mechanism levies into the costs of your products that you are taking from imported goods. That could change a bit of the economics of what are your normal costs. Implement a deforestation-free sourcing strategy so you ensure that there's a correct paper trail in place in case there are some issues in the future. And if you are reporting on the CSRD, be ready. 2025 is your baseline year, so have the data well collected and ready to report by December this year. Review and validate green claims from your suppliers and from yourselves. Marketing teams should be trained into this, and treat geopolitical risks and climate risks as a recurring board agenda. 2026, it will be a very, very rocky year. We don't know what is expected, and we are pending with a lot of what is happening in the world. Think Iran, think China, think US, think Greenland, think Venezuela. If you have any questions, I hope I gave you a little overview of what can happen this year. It's nico@hillmanassociates.com. This is a summary where you see the geopolitical risks of what we spoke in this presentation. And John, if you have any questions, and thank you so much in the background to everyone, whoever is here. Thank you. So, John, back at you.
Thank you, Nico. That was, I don't know about you, I feel exhausted after that. That was quite something. There's quite a run through of many topics.
Yes.
I mean, one of the questions I had was just about people getting in touch if they have follow-up questions, or if they would like to request a copy of the presentation. So maybe leave it here for now, but before you finish, go back to the contact page as well, so that people know where to find you. I think that would be
Julie,
good.
that is in the background, will have this presentation, and when we put it in the resource part of the IIRSM, everyone will have access to these slides. So I'm not cagey about these. A lot of what I produce is for the benefit of everyone, and especially the members of IIRSM.
Yeah, the recording will definitely be available. So you'll make the presentation available as well. That's great, because there's a lot of references and websites and all sorts in there that would be useful. One question, as with a European group, do you feel that Europe is more or less exposed to these risks than other regions?
So in the EU, we are lucky that our legal framework is stronger. The agenda has not slid through the sides like in many places it has happened.
Hmm.
So the EU as well have a machinery that moves slower than other places. So, for example, when the president of China or the president of US change, a lot of things change very fast with them, and then you have to go and challenge in courts. Whereas in the EU, the machinery is a bit slower, and well, you know exactly the case of Switzerland, in which in
Yeah.
certain cases things are extremely glacial when we speak, and then it takes a few more years to react.
Mm.
In the EU itself, we have certain countries that they have a government that they are in climate denial, where certain countries are
Mm.
extremely active in fighting climate change. So we have these two speeds EU, like we have a two speeds world.
Mm.
Are we shelter better than other continents? Definitely, because by the time we need the agreements to pass through, maybe certain issues are the government changes and certain issues progress faster. So in the EU, things progress faster or slower, whereas in other countries,
Right.
they can actually go backwards. And that is the risk that we are seeing with the US withdrawing from international treaties, with the US deregulating pollution, and is the same
Mm.
happening in many countries. So now, funnily enough, with the Biden administration, the US was at the forefront of the fight against climate change. Well, now it's China. China is at the forefront of
Yeah.
the decarbonization
Mm.
of the economy.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you for that. And on the AI one, I mean, it does often feel with sort of technical regulation, the regulator lags behind the reality of the world. Um, can we use AI to to speed up a bit?
So the experience is this: uh, AI feels like Google forgot how to Google. So now to search, we're using AI.
Hmm.
We are inputting a lot of information there. The same what we used to do with Google. We wanted to search something,
Mm.
Google will direct us to the right website. Now we have AI doing summaries for this. In some
Hmm.
cases, yes, it's being very effective. If you don't know anything about a subject, yes, it will help you very fast to get grips on the subject, as as Wikipedia used to do it. Wikipedia, if you wanted, was curated. There was an editor behind. In AI, we don't really have certainty of who is. So far,
Mm.
AI has proven to be quite on the right side of history. That does not mean that will stay forever like that. For
Mm.
example, when the right wing or extreme voices in the US didn't like how Twitter was representing the information of Facebook, and if you remember the first presidency of
Mm.
Trump, he used to call fake news to absolutely everything that was told about him that he didn't like, and he created his own network. And in that network, in the last few weeks, we have seen him portraying himself as the president of Venezuela in a fake Wikipedia page. They have created information about
Mhm.
different subjects, especially climate change, that satisfy their public. So yes, we're seeing extreme views being produced. Is AI yet there? No. However, they are using it for fraud. They're using it for to spread misinformation, and yes, that's a worrying use of AI. Why
Yeah.
AI cannot stop AI? So why these intelligent people are using AI to become to create these malicious uses? Well, there is a lot of money at play, and they're challenging the system to see if they can get it. Probably it's the thrill of it, sadly enough.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. I mean, it's just a couple of questions, but I mean, we're out of time. People know where to get hold of you, so if they have follow-up questions, and particularly about how to defend themselves against some of these risks. But thanks again. That was brilliant. I really, really appreciate it. It's given me a lot of food for thought. Um, for people who are on the call, the next webinar from the European branch is the 19th of February, and I'm just going to quickly check the exact title. It's called Mastering Persuasion: Smart Strategies to Drive Technology, and that's by Alison Hind, previous vice chair of the European Group. So definitely looking forward to that one as well. Please register and share the information and encourage people to sign up. But that's it. That's the end of the webinar. A great one to start the year. Thanks again, Nico. Really appreciate it and hope to discuss it with you face to face very soon.
Thankfully as well. And thank you, Julie, in the background with all the
Yeah.
technicals. Thank you so much to everyone and have a good week.